So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to actually take this apart. I'm going to show you all the panel pieces that you need to make a garment like this. And looking at this kind of quality of workmanship, I would say this is probably would cost around like, all right, Noah, what do you got for me this week?
Check this out.
KITH. Okay, so I bought this a couple weeks ago, so I know what item this is. This is their SS Quinn T. I got this at the KITH Toronto store. It is definitely garment dyed. Hang tag with safety pin. Hang tag has 2 clear pieces inside. Put that off the side. What they did really differently here is that when it comes to fabric, there's something called the technical face and the technical back. The technical face for a single jersey, you're gonna see those lines run down on your shirt. You're probably wearing a single jersey shirt right now. If you look down, you can see those vertical lines. That's called the technical face of a single jersey. What they actually did here is reverse the fabric, and they have the technical back on the outside. A very kind of like different look. It's gonna look a little more, especially when you do a garment dyeing and an enzyme wash, which just feels like and looks like it has been done. It's gonna give it more of a kind of blended look than a single jersey technical face facing out would. This is kind of cool too. Because the technical back is on the outside, when you have a knit structure on the back side are where all the loops are. So on the bottom here, they have a cover stitch, but because the fabric is inside out, you'll see the cover stitch is actually kind of like hidden within the fabric itself, which is kind of a pretty cool touch. Like it's really well thought out. Even on the arms are like that. Whereas you'll see here, this is a cover stitch, how it's normally, and it sits on top of the technical face, so you'll see the 2 lines. But flipping the fabric inside out and having it integrated in like this is, I haven't seen it many times, and it's really well thought out to do that. So a little workmanship defect here. You see this is what we call like a high-low cut, where the shirt on the front is a little higher, a little shorter than the shirt on the back, but this is a little crooked here. Not too crooked. You probably wouldn't even notice this while wearing it. When you are cutting shirts typically for a fabric, it's gonna be pretty square to the fabric. So all the lines run straight up and down. But when you're doing that and you're placing all your pattern pieces together, sometimes there's gonna be a lot of waste because you can't fit the pattern pieces perfectly. What I see here on this fabric, and I probably can confirm it when I flip it inside out, it looks like this fabric, if we're dead onto the camera and that would be straight, the fabric grain direction looks like this. Yeah, slightly twisted. So that might have been done for a couple reasons. 2, they might be able to actually more tightly pack the panels together so they can save on fabric wastage, or they're trying to fit certain t-shirts into certain available fabrics to finish off a run. To be honest, unless you're looking for this, you're not going to notice that, so I wouldn't be too concerned about that. But overall, like other than this like little high-low part here being a little off, workmanship seems pretty decent. I think the shirt was like 120 bucks maybe Canadian. I think like, how much is it US?
78.
78 US. Okay. Let's flip this inside out too. We have the printed KITH neck label here, and it is sewn onto the neck tape. This is made in China. So this is gonna be sewn after it's been going through the garment dye. So it's nice and clean, and that's why it has to be done on top of the neck tape. Because if you were to sew this under the neck tape, you wouldn't be able to go through the garment dyeing process and keeping this crisp and clean. We have a pocket on the front chest here, and we have the KITH logo here on the chest as well. This is done in what's called flocking, almost like a suede fuzzy transfer that would get cut out and then just transfer it onto here. We have a black care label in here, designed in New York, assembled in China. And then for the high-low here, we have a cotton twill with a bar tack to reinforce the side split. So when you're integrating side splits, you're typically gonna do this when you're doing a little longer of a shirt, because it allows a little bit of movement around the hips so that the t-shirt doesn't feel too tight and constricting. So taking a look on the inside of the garment here. So there's a little blemish on the fabric in here. I don't know what that came from, but I wouldn't really necessarily call that a huge manufacturing defect. So if you guys know, one of our first videos that really popped off was our essentials review. And I talked about how the neck just didn't sit flat because they didn't put a cover stitch here. And you'll see here they did. There's a nice clean line right here. And it keeps the back down. And you'll see in this one, you can barely notice that cover stitch, but again, it's going to finish the neck a lot nicer. If you're a brand and you're making t-shirts, little elements like this of putting the neck tape and having the cover stitch to hold down the neck ribbing, it's not something that's gonna actually add a huge amount of cost to the manufacturing side, but it will make a big difference in making the garment feel a lot more finished. I would say other than that high-low seam not being perfectly centered, and other than the fabric not being on grain, I don't really see a lot of huge defects here. I would say from a design perspective, this color, this wash, I think it's really on trend. And at least on the design side, from what I've seen for a lot of different KITH items, their designer seems to, they pay attention to the details, which is great. Then on the neck, we have a 1x1 rib. That's it for construction at least. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to actually take this apart. I'm going to show you all the panel pieces that you need to make a garment like this. And I'll give you my final thoughts on what this costs to make in China. So now that we've taken the main label off, you'll see it is a gross grain, and they have the KITH logo, they'll have the size, and they will have the made in China on this as well. And because this is white, when they're sewing this to the neck tape, the main thread is going to be white, and then the bobbin on the back for the sewing machine is going to be color matched to the final dyed garment. It's going to be the same as the threads everywhere else. So a lot of brands I see actually sewing this on and then they don't even match the outside. Don't use the same thread color for the main thread and the bobbin if you're going to be sewing it on a neck tape like this, because you don't want it showing through. But here's the main label, put that off to the side. We have the pocket here. So now that I have the pocket off, you can actually see remnants of the garment pre-garment dyeing. So you're gonna be doing that in what's called a PFD state. So that's called prepared for dyeing. That means all the machine oils have been washed off, any dirt that was there before the fabric was transferred, any of the stuff that's on the grease fabric is going to be washed off, and it's going to be prepared for accepting the dye stuffs for garment dyeing. And you'll see here, right on this pocket right here, as well as over here, you'll see the fabric is still white. That is going to be the fabric in the PFD state before it goes garment dyeing. And you're always going to see this usually on garment dyed items on very thick or bulky seams. Obviously here we have the two here plus that, so the seams are a little thicker because the dye isn't penetrating all the way through the fabric, so it's not going to get those points. Because if you are garment dyeing and you want to achieve a specific color, there's going to be a balance of the dye stuffs and how long you spend dyeing the garment to achieve this look and this color that you ultimately want, and hand feel. Because if you do dye something for too long, you're not going to be able to get this kind of like vintage look, because it's going to penetrate all the way through. It's going to make the garment really dark to make it one solid color. A lot of garment dyed items you'll see as well, where near the seams here, it might be a little white. That means they're just not really dyeing it properly. Maybe they're using a dye house that just wants to rush the process and pump the items through and not give each garment the amount of time it needs to achieve the specific color. But if you are getting stuff like that from your manufacturer where near the seams, it's not evenly dyed, that's something to pay attention to for the dye house and the garment dyeing process. Yeah. And when it comes to the pocket itself, you'll see here they've actually sewn the edges here just to stop the cotton from fraying, and then they flip it inside out. Usually a lot of factories are going to have just specific machines here that will clamp down and sew the pocket on a specific path. Cut this pocket here. You'll be able to see here the flocking. See, it's a little layer here. So typically when you're using a transfer like this, you're going to have, the factory will have a supplier, they'll do the transfer. These will come on like little plastic sheets, and then they'll get melted onto here. Let's see if I can peel this. So you'll see here with the flocking, I've removed some of the spicy bits, and you can see the glue substrate here. Again, this is gonna come from a separate supplier that's gonna go to your cut and sew manufacturer. It's gonna usually come on a little plastic sheet. They're gonna place it here. They're gonna heat press that on. It's gonna melt the glue and bond it to the fabric. The way they're going to get this to color match the fabric itself is during the development stage, you're going to get what's called a lab dip of the garment dye, and they're gonna send that color to the manufacturer that is going to be doing the flocking, or they're gonna try to garment dye this to a specific coloro or Pantone code. That's gonna go to the manufacturer, and that's why you're gonna see this is close, but it's not going to be the exact same, nor do you want it to be. You want it to pop a little bit to have some visual interest, but that is the pocket. All right, so let's take apart the rest of the garment. I'm gonna show you all the panels you're gonna need to make something like this. You'll see here the care label is sewn on top as well because it has to be done after the garment dyeing process. You'll see here we have the twill tape here on the side. There's a bar tack here, so I'm gonna have to just cut through it because that is gonna take forever. But you'll see here again, white, because that is the base fabric, so the dye has not penetrated all the way through. So the twill. Okay, here is your neck ribbing. So when it comes to neck ribbing, if you are a brand trying to make shirts, if you're using in-stock fabric, a lot of the time the neck ribbing is going to match the swatch books for the main body fabrics. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well. Here is your neck tape. Depending on the neck tape itself, it can either be the self fabric, as in the t-shirt fabric itself, or it can be another fabric that's gonna be more tightly knit and softer. But usually what happens is they're gonna cut strips thinner than this, and they're gonna feed it through a machine that will fold over the sides like this as it pulls through. And then that is sewn as the neck tape. Next, I'm gonna separate the sleeve panels here. This would be a traditional sleeve, not I don't have a drop sleeve on this either, but you'll see the seams of the shoulder and at the shoulder, and then it's gonna have a traditional sleeve here. Here's the right sleeve. And depending on how you're actually gonna shape the shoulder, you can either have identical panels, or you can have panels that are shaped differently that account for the front and back of the shirt. Now this would be a sleeveless tee. So here's all the components that you need to make this KITH Quinn tee. You have your neck ribbing, the twill tape for the high-low slit, the neck tape, front pocket, sleeve panels, front panel, back panel, as well as the main label, care label, and hang tags. All right, so now that you know all the components you need to make a shirt like this, let's see what the GSM is, and I won't tell you what I think it's cost to make. So what GSM is grams per square meter, and it's one way to measure fabric to see how heavy you want your fabric to be. So just by looking at the fabric, I can tell it is a more coarse fabric. It is a larger yarn. The big trend right now, especially in t-shirts, is going to the heavier side. So I'm gonna guess it's probably around 300 GSM. It doesn't feel overly heavy, but yeah, so 315. So if you are a brand right now, keep in mind, people are looking for heavier shirts. Heavier doesn't necessarily mean higher quality. It just means it is a heavier shirt, but that is the trend. So let's recap. This KITH Quinn shirt has a high-low cut with splits on the side with twill tape. It has a front pocket with flocking for branding. The fabric has the technical face on the outside, which I think was a very interesting design element to create this shirt. It has been garment dyed. It feels like it has been enzyme washed, and it retailed for around 80 bucks US, 110 Canadian. I would say to make a shirt like this with garment dyeing is going to be a little bit more expensive than what's called piece dyeing or fabric dyeing. But looking at a shirt like this, with the pocket, with the flocking, with the twill tape, with the construction I'm seeing here, so knowing that this is made in China, cotton prices are quite a bit higher than they used to be in the past. And looking at this kind of quality of workmanship, I would say this is probably would cost around like $8 to $11 to make in China, assuming they're making these in the thousands, of course. So overall, I would say the construction's pretty decent on this. The seam on the bottom is obviously off. If you're looking to buy this shirt, that's something to keep in mind, is just making sure the bottom seam is square. If you're a brand, I would say take a lot of design notes from here, because from a design perspective, you can tell that the designer spent time to think about the small, tiny details. Even like bar tacking the side seams, that could have been a suggestion from their manufacturer, but either way, that shows it's a great partnership that they have with their factory. The reversing of the fabric to have this different aesthetic and kind of hide the cover stitch is a nice touch. So would I say it's worth it at 110 Canadian, 78 US? I think so. Honestly, you're getting something that is not your traditional tee. There is thought and intention put into this, at least on the design side. And on the manufacturing side, other than little minor details, I would say this is pretty well made. But let me know your thoughts and what are the brands that you want to see us do on the show. This is what it costs. If you guys want to see more of these type of videos and more on what goes on behind the scenes in fashion, don't forget to subscribe and check out these videos.